Hey guys, welcome back to Status Dramaticus. So today we are going to discuss about a neurological topic called Guillain-Barré syndrome. So let's get started. This is the outline for today's video. First we'll talk about the introduction, then the epidemiology, antecedent events causing GBS, pathogenesis and pathophysiology, variants of GBS, clinical manifestations, diagnostic criteria, lab investigation and the medical management of this condition. I have not included CIDP in this video. It's a totally different entity and I'll be talking about in my coming videos. Timestamps will be available in the description. So let's get started. This is a general introduction for GBS. It's a rapid onset muscle weakness caused by immune system damaging the peripheral nervous system. Although the cause is unknown, the underlying mechanism involves autoimmune disorder in which the body's own immune system attacks the peripheral nerves and damages its myelin insulation. The syndrome is named after French neurologists Georges Guillain and Alexandre Barré, who together with French physician André Stroll described the condition in 1916. Coming to the epidemiology, the incidence of this condition is 1 to 4 per lakh population in the Western countries. Males are more affected than females. Adults are more affected than children. The most common form of GBS is acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy or AIDP. Coming to the antecedent events leading to GBS, they are of three varieties: infection, vaccination and others. GBS usually occurs after 1 to 3 weeks of resolution of infection, and the common infections which lead to GBS is respiratory, most common, URTI or LRTI, gastroenteritis, most commonly by Campylobacter jejuni, and this is most commonly associated with a variant of GBS called AMAN. I will be describing about it later in the video. The other infections implicated with GBS are CMV, Epstein-Barr virus, HIV, hepatitis E, mycoplasma and Zika virus infections. Vaccinations leading to GBS. Some literature include influenza or H1N1 swine flu vaccination leading to GBS. Other events which might lead to GBS, though the literature lacks significant impact regarding the situation, is pregnancy and surgery. Coming to the pathogenesis and pathophysiology, as I mentioned earlier, GBS is an autoimmune disorder, and in this both cell-mediated immunity and humoral immunity is involved. Immune responses formed against non-self antigens get misdirected to host nerve tissue due to resemblance of its epitome. This is called molecular mimicry. So the phenomenon driving the entire process of GBS is molecular mimicry. Some autoantibodies are detected in the various variants of GBS. Let's get into it. First, we have the most commonly detected anti-GM1 antibody, which is anti-ganglioside GM1. It is most commonly seen in AIDP. Then we have anti-GD1A and anti-GM1, which is found in AMAN. Then anti-GD1A and anti-GM1, which is also found in AMSAN. Then we have anti-GQ1B found in Miller-Fisher syndrome. Then we have anti-GT1A found in acute pharyngeal cervicobrachial neuropathy, which is also a variant of GBS. This is a diagram I took from Harrison, which explains the pathogenesis of this condition. Let's focus on the first part of this diagram. As you can see, there is a neuron showing inflammation of its myelin sheath. Okay. As you can see, there are unidentified antigen against which antibodies are formed, and they are reacting against these antigens. So first event is antibody binding, leading to complement activation and formation of membrane attack complex, leading to myelin sequestration and nerve injury. Finally, this is scavenged by macrophages. So as you can see in this cut section, macrophage is scavenging the myelin. Okay. Now coming to the second part of this image, in this again you can see a neuron, but here the antibodies are directed against the nodes of Ranvier, directly attacking the axon, as you can see in this image. And similarly, the membrane anticomplex is formed and the macrophage is now scavenging the axon first before the myelin. So these are the two forms of pathogenesis occurring in GBS and its variants. As we have seen earlier, there are two forms. First is demyelinating form, which is the first part of that image. Then we have the axonal degeneration form. In demyelinating form of GBS, we have complement proteins and antibodies depositing over the outer surface of Schwann cells, which form the myelin layer in peripheral nervous system. This leads to activation of complement proteins, leading to vesicular degeneration of myelin. And finally, macrophages get activated and scavenge the myelin debris, leading to demyelination of the neuron. But in axonal degeneration, the complement proteins and antibodies deposit on the nodes of Ranvier where the myelins are lacking. And the activation of complement proteins lead to detachment of myelin from the axon. And finally, macrophages get activated and scavenge the axon, leading to axonal injury. So the predominant outcome in demyelinating form of GBS is conduction block because the myelin is destroyed. But the predominant outcome in axonal degeneration is axonal injury. The recovery is complete in demyelinating form because after some time the remyelination of the nerve occurs. But recovery is incomplete with residual disability in axonal degeneration variant. As I have said earlier, the recovery is faster and complete in demyelinating form, and it is slower recovery in axonal degeneration because the axon is injured here and it takes time for the axons to heal, and there is always a residual disability. Now coming to the variants of GBS, as I have said earlier, the most common form is AIDP or acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. It is found most commonly in adults than in children, and it is a demyelinating form of pathogenesis with variable secondary axonal damage. The second variant is AMAN or AMAN, which is acute motor axonal neuropathy. This is found more commonly in children than in adults and in the region like China and Mexico. Here it is an axonal degeneration form affecting predominantly the motor neurons and nerve roots only. Now the next variant is AMSAN or acute motor sensory axonal neuropathy. It affects mostly the adults. Then it is also a axonal degeneration form, but it affects both motor and sensory neurons equally. Then we have Miller-Fisher syndrome. It affects both adults and children, and it is also a axonal degeneration form, but some variants of MFS also shows demyelinating injury. Now coming to the clinical manifestations of GBS, we will be talking about in case of motor involvement, sensory involvement, autonomic dysfunction and cranial nerve involvement. Okay. So first coming to motor involvement, it is a rapidly progressive disease. Onset to peak of the disease occurs within 4 weeks and no further deterioration occurs after 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, there can only be plateau of the disease, which means no further deterioration or any improvement, and following which there will be recovery. In the motor involvement, there is flaccid or lower motor neuron paralysis, which is of ascending pattern, symmetric, involving both the limbs, first the lower limbs followed by the upper limbs, with paralysis more of lower limbs than of upper limbs, and the spread within the limb is proximal to distal. Proximal muscles are involved first, then the distal muscles. The deep tendon reflexes are lost, that's why this condition is called areflexia, but it may be attenuated in the earlier days of manifestation. Now coming to the sensory involvement, there may be tingling paresthesias in extremities, and in early days some patients, about 50% of them, complain about radicular pain along neck, shoulder or spine. Vibration and position sense is also affected because these are also carried by large myelinated nerves, and the main pathogenesis occurring in GBS is demyelination. So these sensations are also affected. Now coming to the autonomic dysfunction, there is loss of vasomotor tone or vasomotor control leading to labile blood pressure with or without postural hypotension, and there may be also tachy or bradycardia. All these are labile events. Then there is bladder and bowel involvement, but it occurs only later in the course of the disease. Next we have the cranial nerve involvement. Bilateral facial nerve palsy, 7th cranial nerve, lower motor neuron palsy is seen in 50% patients. Then we have bulbar weakness due to involvement of 9th and 10th cranial nerve, again lower motor neuron, leading to difficulty in handling secretions and maintaining airway. Ocular nerves such as 3rd, 4th and 6th cranial nerve may also be affected in some cases. No fever at presentation, which shows no evidence of active infection, and if present, we should first rule out concomitant HIV. Respiratory muscle paralysis occurs in 30% patients, and hence they require ventilatory support. In AMAN, there is predominantly motor weakness, and in AMSAN, there is motor plus sensory manifestation. In Miller-Fisher syndrome, there is areflexia, ataxia and ophthalmoplegia. This is a triad of Miller-Fisher syndrome. Ophthalmoplegia with pupillary paralysis, and there is absence of limb weakness. Now coming to the diagnostic criteria for GBS, we have Asbury criteria for Guillain-Barré syndrome. Then we have Brighton epidemiological diagnostic criteria for GBS. Asbury criteria shows required manifestations for GBS diagnosis and supportive manifestation for diagnosing GBS syndrome. In required, we have progressive weakness of 2 or more limbs due to neuropathy, areflexia, disease course less than 4 weeks, exclusion of other causes like vasculitis, toxins, botulism, diphtheria, porphyria, localized spinal cord or cauda equina syndrome. And in supportive, we have relatively symmetrical weakness, mild sensory involvement, facial or other cranial nerve involvement, absence of fever, typical CSF profile showing albumin cytological dissociation, and electrophysiological evidence of demyelination. And in Brighton criteria, we have 3 levels of diagnostic certainty. 4th one is doubtful. Level 1 shows all the symptoms like bilateral and flaccid weakness of limbs, decreased or absence deep tendon reflexes in weak limbs, monophasic course and time between onset to peak within 28 days, absence of alternative diagnosis, CSF count less than 50 per ml, CSF protein concentration more than 60 milligram per deciliter, nerve conduction study consistent with one of the subtypes of GBS. In level 2 of diagnostic certainty, cell count and protein concentration in CSF along with nerve conduction study may be doubtful. And level 3 of diagnostic certainty, all these 3 may be doubtful. Now coming to the lab investigations. First, coming to the CSF study, these findings may become evident after 48 hours of disease onset. And in CSF study, we have increased CSF protein 1 to 10 gram per liter and no persistent pleocytosis. If there is persistent pleocytosis, first rule out viral myelitis or HIV in the patient. And in nerve conduction studies, for AIDP, the earliest feature is prolonged F wave latency, prolonged distal latency and decreased amplitude of combined motor action potentials. Later, there may be decrease in conduction velocity and temporal dispersion. And in axonal forms, there is decrease in amplitude of combined motor action potentials without any conduction slowing or prolongation of distal latencies. So in AIDP there is prolonged latencies along with decrease in conduction velocity, but in axonal form there is only decrease in amplitude of CMAPs without any conduction slowing. Now coming to finally the medical management of GBS. The definitive treatment options available are IV immunoglobulins and plasmapheresis. IV immunoglobulin is preferred for GBS and its variants in both adult and pediatric population. The dose of IVIG is 2 gram per kg body weight in divided doses. Very important, there is no role of steroids in the treatment of GBS. The adjunctive therapy along with this definitive treatment can be, for dysautonomia, use short acting drugs, because as we have seen earlier, the autonomic dysfunction is very labile and long acting drugs might lead to either hypotension or hypertension. Prevention of nosocomial infections, DVT prophylaxis, as these patients are most probably bedridden at the peak of the illness. DVT prophylaxis is recommended with compression stockings. Nutritional support, passive range of movements is encouraged. Care for cornea. Then we have pain management. These patients, they respond well to NSAIDs. And finally, ventilatory support for patients with respiratory muscle paralysis and deranged pulmonary function test. And emotional support is required to patients and their relatives, because this illness is a very depressing illness. The patient who was otherwise fine suddenly finds himself bedridden within weeks, which has a huge emotional impact on his career, his profession, his life, his family support, everything. So emotional support is advised to patients and their relatives, explaining them regarding the course of the illness and the good prognostic markers for the illness. So that's it about GBS. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel. I'll be back soon with another topic. Until then, stay sharp.